Hi everyone, I'm Paula Harvey from Tejon Ranch Conservancy. Welcome to the 5th lesson in our series on nature journaling by remote learning. Today's lesson is called Zoom In, Zoom Out. So let's get started. All right, so when you fill in your table of contents, you're going to write Zoom In, Zoom Out. That's the title. And in this, we are going to study a subject at 3 different scales: life size, magnified, and then zoomed out way far away. Okay, we're going to use circles. We'll circle what we're magnifying. So you'll draw your life size piece, whatever part of that you're going to magnify, you'll circle that. You'll draw a line to another picture, which you'll also make in a circle as if that circle represents a magnifying glass, and then you will draw that in. That'll be the zoomed in part, the magnified part. Then the third drawing that you're going to do is a zoomed out view. In that, you're going to include details, such as maybe a landscape or growth forms or where that subject is, a small map, for example. You're going to do ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and a picture. So you'll use writing, drawing, and numbers to record all of your observations. Now, this last sentence that's on this slide, keep this in mind. It may be a really good closing sentence for your reflection. There's a lot you can observe by changing your level of focus. Always begin with your metadata. So remember, you're going to start with your day, the date, the time of day, the weather, the temperature, the wind speed, the percent of cloud cover, and your location, both where you are and what is the habitat. So when you look at my journal page, you'll notice that I wrote that it was in Lockwood Valley, and specifically within Lockwood Valley, it was on a road called Chico Larson Way. And on that road, I was on the shoulder of the road to study an ant nest. And that entire place is in the Los Padres National Forest. And it is a sagebrush high desert habitat. And I included the elevation as well. The first thing you're going to do is, once you've decided what you're going to study, you're going to start just like you did on all of your previous lessons. You're going to talk to yourself. You're going to do self-talk about what you are noticing. I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of, and you're going to say lots of them. Just look at your subject and start talking to yourself about what you're seeing. Remember, you want to hear what you're thinking. Then you're going to draw in the center of your journal page the life-size image of whatever it is you're studying. Now, I was studying a red ant and its habitat, which was an anthill. So on my journal page, I drew a 1/4 inch ant because that was the measurement of that ant. And then I added my I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of, as after I had drawn it. So this time you're going to start with the drawing and then add those measurements and your ABCs. Once you've done that, you're going to pick what part of the subject you're studying that you're going to magnify. In my case, a 1/4 inch ant, I am only going to study the entire ant, not just a part of that ant. I could have done a part, but it's so small that it would have been very difficult for me to do that. So I circled the whole ant, drew a line to my magnified version. So there's my magnified version of the ant. And I also included for you a photograph of the ant that I was actually studying. Then you'll notice that in my magnification, I actually made it more of a diagram. So I did a lot of labels, and I added my I notice and I wonder. And I also added could it be's to my wonder. So not only what are your questions, but do you have any hypotheses about what it could be? Once you've done that zoom in, now you're going to zoom out. So standing back, I looked at the actual ant nest in my case. And then I wrote more, I notices, I wonders, and could it be, but I was writing those about my zoomed out part. So you're going to have, I notice for life size, magnified, and zoomed out. I wonder for life size, magnified, and zoomed out. And could it be's for the same thing. So I notice, I wonder, could it be's, and then don't forget, this reminds me of. In this case, I wanted to show you something. You don't always have to use a ruler to measure. So in this case, I didn't have a ruler, I had a pencil. And I took a picture with the pencil pointing to the hole that the ants were going into. And I also used that pencil to help me measure the radius of that anthill. The radius of that anthill from where the pencil was 6 inches. On the other side, it was a little larger, maybe 7 inches. So the diameter of that anthill is probably 13 or 14 inches. So you can use all kinds of things to be a measuring tool. When you're doing those could it be's, remember that's your hypotheses. Why do you think? What are some ideas that help you to answer your questions? One of the questions that I had that I wrote in my journal was, I noticed that the ant has mandibles, teeth on the front, but also has a stinger on its abdomen. I wonder if which it uses for self-defense, both of them or one of them. Could it be that it uses the mandibles for self-defense? Because I've been bitten before, so it's possible that that's what it does, is it bites you to try to scare you off. If you want to do some research on what you're studying, you're going to want to include your source of that research. And I got very curious. What kind of ant is this? And I did want to know, does it use its stinger or its mouth for self-defense? When you're using research and you're adding that to your journal page, include the source. I have 2 sources that I used. One was called formiculture.com. I used that to identify a certain part of the ant's body. And then other information I found from University of California, including what kind of ant that was. So I wrote those down so I know what the sources of my research are. I was also really careful to use good sources. Now, there's my journal entry. It's all completed, except for my reflection, which is on a separate page. You're going to stop this video. You're going to go do your research, your study. You're going to zoom in, zoom out, do a life size. And when you're done, then you're going to come back and answer the questions that follow this slide to do your reflection. So we'll see you when you're done. Okay, so you're back. You've done your study. You've done it from 3 different perspectives. And I want you to start thinking about all the things that you've learned by looking at it from 3 different perspectives. So the first set of questions are, what were you able to learn because you looked at your subject in 3 different ways? That's the general overarching question. What did you learn because you looked at it from 3 different ways? Now, specifically, what did you see when you looked at your life-size view? What did you see when you looked at the zoomed-in view? And what did you see when you looked at the zoomed-out view? So the first question is general. What kinds of things did you see by looking at it from 3 different perspectives? Now, give me one thing that you learned from looking at it at life size, one thing you learned looking at zoomed in, and one thing you learned zoomed out. Remember to use question answer form. Remember that question answer form is using as many words in the answer that were in the question. What state do you live in? The state that I live in is California. So look at question number 2. What did you see from your life-size view? What I saw from my life-size view was, that would be question answer form. Besides these 4 questions, you have 3 more questions, and those are the next generation science standards questions. And again, in question answer form. These questions are a little more complex. They're multiple parts, and you need to be sure to address all parts, not just one. So for structure and function, what are some of the structures or parts you observed at the zoomed in scale, and at the life size scale, and at the zoomed out scale? Then for scale, proportion, and quantity, are there structures or patterns of shapes that you're seeing in the magnified view that are similar to structures you see in the distant view? How are they alike or different? Now, if you're not seeing shapes that are the same in the magnified and the distant view, how are they different? So you can't just say, no, I didn't see any that were the same. You have to say, well, then what was different? And then the last one, cause and effect. Look at some of the unique features of the subject that you focused on in your journal. What did you notice? And then the last step, take the answers to your questions, number them 1 through 7, so that you know what order you want to put these answers in, so that it makes a meaningful, coherent paragraph that where it's not just a bunch of disjointed answers, but they all link together. And then you're going to start with an introductory sentence. Could be something as simple as, in this journal entry, I looked at my subject from 3 different perspectives. Then write those 7 answers in the order that you think works the best, and then use a closing sentence. Remember, at the beginning of the slide, I told you what that closing sentence might be. You're able to observe a lot when you look at things from 3 different perspectives. Once you're done with that paragraph, don't forget to add lesson 5 to your table of contents. Well, I hope you had fun doing this particular exercise. I hope you'll use zoom in and zoom out with all of your nature journaling that you do in the future. And I enjoyed sharing this with you. I look forward to seeing you again for lesson 6. Bye for now.